90%. That is the share of adults alive today who have had at least one cavity. 9 in 10 people reading these words right now. And yet, go back 10,000 years, and that number collapses to something close to zero. That gap is not a mystery. It is a record, and it is written in bone. For roughly 300,000 years of Homo sapiens, the mouth was a different ecosystem. Not brushed and rinsed and fluoride treated, but genuinely, chemically, microbially different. The question is why, and the answer will make you look at your breakfast very differently. Here is what the bones quietly recorded. Hunter-gatherers showed cavity rates as low as 1.5% of all teeth examined. Early farmers showed rates as high as 11%. Same species, same anatomy, completely different mouths. The variable was the food. Scientists once assumed the story was simple. Farming bad, hunting good. Then they excavated a site called Tafaralt in Morocco, dating to between 15,000 and 13,700 years ago. The people buried there were hunter-gatherers, not farmers, and yet more than half their teeth showed signs of decay. When researchers looked at the calculus, they found wild acorns and wild oats, high in fermentable starch. The bacteria did not care that the food came from a forest instead of a field. What they cared about was the sugar. Feed bacteria fermentable carbohydrates, and they will dissolve your teeth. Full stop. So what was different for the populations with nearly zero decay? The answer comes from a researcher named Christina Warinner, who made a discovery that changed how we read ancient health. Dental calculus turns out to be a time capsule. It preserves DNA, proteins, bacteria, food particles, even traces of plants, for tens of thousands of years. Warinner found that calculus from medieval skeletons in Germany contained 100 to 1,000 times more DNA than the surrounding bone. An untouched archive, sitting ignored in nearly every skeletal collection on Earth. Pre-agricultural mouths were not sterile. They were not perfect, but they were balanced. The key cavity-causing pathogen, Streptococcus mutans, was present, but it was restrained, outnumbered, kept in check by everything else that was there. Then came the grain. When farming spread out of the Fertile Crescent around 10,000 years ago, human diets shifted toward refined starch. Each step gave Streptococcus mutans exactly what it needed to dominate. A 2013 study published in Nature Genetics recorded the moment this happened. A distinct ecological shift in the oral microbiome, timed precisely to the adoption of agriculture. And then a second shift, sharper and more severe, timed to the Industrial Revolution, when refined sugar became cheap and widely available. 2 diet changes, 2 collapses of oral health, written in the calcium of old teeth. Now here is where it gets strange, because the collapse was not universal, not immediately, not everywhere. At a cemetery called Khiday, beside the White Nile in central Sudan, researchers examined the teeth of people who lived there across several thousand years. What they expected to find was the usual collapse. What they found instead was fewer than 1% of teeth with any signs of decay. In a farming population, eating grain, with no dentist within several thousand years in any direction. Chemical analysis showed that almost every individual at Khiday had been regularly consuming a plant called purple nutsedge, Cyperus rotundus, a bitter, tuberous weed. Today it is considered one of the most invasive plants on Earth. 10,000 years ago, it was a weapon. Its chemical compounds directly inhibit the growth of Streptococcus mutans. These people were eating it continuously, before agriculture arrived and after. They may not have known the mechanism, but they knew the result. Healthy teeth. In Mesopotamia, as far back as 5000 BC, people were using chewing sticks, small twigs from the Salvadora persica tree, the arak, fraying the end until it became a brush. The same plant is still used today across the Middle East and parts of Africa under the name miswak. Clinical studies have found its mechanical and antimicrobial effect equal to or greater than a modern toothbrush. 7,000 years of continuous use. Not out of habit, because it worked. The picture that emerges is not one of primitive ignorance waiting to be saved by modern dentistry. It is one of populations that had found, through long trial and long error, a working relationship with their own mouths. A relationship defined above all by diet. Low in fermentable sugar, high in fiber and rough plant material that physically scraped teeth clean. What changed was not knowledge, it was economics. Grain was calorie-dense, storable, tradable. Sugar was addictive and eventually cheap. The shift was not a choice made in full awareness of the dental consequences. It was a trade. More food, more stability, more civilization. For a mouth increasingly at war with itself. And here is where the bones speak their last line. The industrial human mouth, the one you are living in right now, is the output of two great disruptions: agriculture and refined sugar. Streptococcus mutans is no longer restrained. It has won its ecological battle. The diverse, balanced oral microbiome of your pre-agricultural ancestors has been replaced by something narrower, more acidic, more destructive. 90% of adults over 20 have experienced a cavity. 1 in 5 currently has untreated decay. We spend billions of dollars every year on the dentistry required to manage a condition that for most of human history barely existed. The toothbrush came. The fluoride came. The dental drill came. And still the number climbs. If you found this useful, subscribe. There is more written in the bones.